sort of a demarcation point in the White House, a before and after, a time when everything changed. It really was the leaking and publishing of the Pentagon Papers. The mood in the White House changed, and not for the better.
Nixon told his chief of staff, Bob Haldeman, to pull out an old plan for keeping tabs on the people he believed to be his enemies. It had been drawn up by a White House lawyer, Tom Huston.
Now, you remember Houston's plan.
Haldeman at one point turns to me and says, I'd like to have you see if you can get done what Tom Huston was unable to accomplish. And here was just a startling plan where they were going to start intelligence by wiretapping, by mail covers, black bag jobs, and enter buildings and place bugs or steal documents or photograph them. And it was across the board. And plus, it appeared to me, something I did know, is that the CIA really had no authority to operate domestically. And it looked to me like it was going to put the CIA right in the middle of domestic operations. About the hottest document I'd ever seen.
In the aftermath of the leak that had revealed the secret bombing of Cambodia, Nixon had approved Tom Huston's plan, even though most everything in it was illegal. It had been set aside when FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover refused to go along.
However, Nixon never gave up on that, and the Huston plan then reemerged later as the plumbers. But this time, it didn't involve the FBI, it didn't involve the CIA. The plumbers ran totally out of the White House because Nixon had come to the point he didn't trust the Congress, he didn't trust the courts, he didn't trust the press, and he didn't trust the FBI or the CIA. So that everything over the years was being more and more centralized. And the anti-leak business, the finding out who's talking and stopping them, moved from intelligence agencies, law enforcement, into the basement of the White House. It became a secret police operation.
John Ehrlichman called in Bud Krogh and gave him the assignment to investigate the man who had passed the Pentagon Papers to the Times, Dr. Daniel Ellsberg, a former Defense Department analyst.
He said, we want you to set up a unit, an investigation unit, to find out why these documents were released, who specifically was behind it. Besides Dr. Ellsberg, there must have been other people involved. The president views this as a matter of the highest national security importance, and you will be assisted by an assistant from Henry Kissinger, who will join you as a co-director of that unit.
Nixon ordered the plumbers to find the leaks.
This was a matter of the highest urgency. The president viewed this as a matter of the highest national security importance. I didn't ask any questions when I was given that assignment. I felt that to question whether national security was at stake would have really been, I don't want to say in contravention of my assignment, but they weren't paying me to question the president's judgment and Dr. Kissinger's judgment as to the seriousness of the release of those documents and what it might mean to his ability to carry out his foreign policy, and particularly the policy to disengage from South Vietnam.
The president was also convinced there might be classified documents, perhaps involving his own administration, in a safe at a respected Washington think tank.
Did they get the Brookings Institute raided last night? So, get it done. I want it done. I want the Brookings Institute, say, cleaned out. And have it cleaned out in a way that they think somebody else will be.
When the president's order turned into a plan to firebomb Brookings, his staff quietly called it off. But the plan to get information to discredit Daniel Ellsberg moved ahead. The plumbers were ordered to break into his psychiatrist's office.
I think one of the more unfortunate parts of that period, from July 1971 through the actual entry operation into Dr. Fielding's office, I don't use that term as a substitute for what it really was, as a burglary. We use terms like enemy, traitor, to describe Dr. Ellsberg's act, because we basically felt that what he had done was a treasonable act, and that we viewed him that way.
Gordon Liddy and Howard Hunt were also members of the plumbers.
G. Gordon Liddy and E. Howard Hunt recommended that they use some of the associates that E. Howard Hunt had worked with during the Bay of Pigs period many years before.
At midnight on a Friday in early September 1971, they broke into Dr. Fielding's office.
When I saw the pictures of what they had done to the office, my reaction was, that is not a covert operation. That's not what we had proposed. So I was troubled more by the fact that they had busted up the office and that it was contrary to what we had approved. I was troubled by that, but not so troubled that this was an enormous abridgment of Dr. Lewis Fielding's rights, not to be only free from an unwarranted search, but to be free from somebody coming in and smashing up his office. I showed them to John Ehrlichman, whose reaction was, shut it down. This is beyond what I approved. And we did.
Hunt and Liddy, as well as the Cuban Americans recruited for the break-in, had botched their mission, but they had not been caught.
These people were not good burglars. They were bunglers. And so then when that didn't work and they wanted to get them out of there, that's how I inherited them over at the committee to re-elect.
Bud Krogh has apologized, not only to me but a lot of others, for sticking me with Gordon Liddy.
I was, in a sense, told to hire him and that he had other abilities. I wasn't quite sure what that meant.
A decade before he ended up in the White House and then at the committee to re-elect the president, Gordon Liddy had worked for the FBI.
He once volunteered to Ehrlichman to kill Dean and I. And fortunately, Ehrlichman said, no, I don't think we need to do that. So when you get somebody like that at a lower level, then you have pressure at a higher level, things are going to happen.
President Nixon tried to portray himself as above the political fray. On June 1, 1972, he crowned a trip to the Soviet Union with a dramatic arrival on Capitol Hill.
The President of the United States.
He was the first American president to visit the Soviet Union, and he returned to announce that the two superpowers had agreed to a détente. The election was 5 months away. Polls showed he was far ahead of the man who would be named the Democratic nominee, George McGovern. But Nixon had his own secret spy operation in place, and it was a simple next step to use it in the presidential campaign.
You know, people say to me, well, why did you do Watergate? Because you didn't need it. Absolutely correct. We didn't need it at all. But Nixon always wanted more information. He just felt that was the way to keep himself on top and everyone else on the bottom.
I think that there was no difference, I think, in Nixon's mind between the politics, the national security. To him, it was all about him. It was all about his enemies, trying to stop him from doing these things that he sincerely believed in.
June 17, 1972. At 2 a.m., Washington police respond to a burglary at the Watergate headquarters of the Democratic Party. 5 well-dressed men, 3 of them Cuban Americans, are arrested. In their pockets are packets of $100 bills, all new, all consecutively numbered.
What is this? Burglars, business suits, lots of money, $100 bills in their pockets. There was a sense this is strange. Who did this? Who sponsored it? Why?
The reporters who got the Watergate assignment got it almost by chance. Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein were both on the Metro desk, assigned to local, not national stories.
You want to know why the Post was so good, in addition to Woodward and Bernstein. But it was a police story. It was all happening in a court that the average Washington correspondent, especially from a New York paper, they couldn't find a police court here if they had a map.
I went to the arraignment hearing at the local Superior Court, and they called the 5 burglars in. And the judge asked James McCord, where do you work? And McCord went,